Hello, I'm making a video right now to try to sum up a few things and try to let everyone know about them. First of all, the thing that I had to let everyone know about is the fact that law enforcement basically tries to distort the facts in many things whenever they find that the facts are totally against them and the way that the facts were retrieved is unarguable. So basically, the fact of the matter is, when June 24th was recently reanalyzed, they found out that I was the one human being with the highest probability chance of becoming extremely rich on this planet, not only because I had instantaneous photographic memory, innovation, and focusing, but also because I was the only brain savant in the world whose powers increase over time. Now, the thing about brain savants is, since 2001, all law enforcement's done is run sex games with Uncle Joey's in-laws. They ran money fraud with other people that would adult supervise me or people that they knew in the family. The money fraud, which was only stopped about 2 months ago. Mainly, this point proving the fact that law enforcement's done absolutely nothing since 2001 except for run sex schemes and money frauds, which means that as soon as they found out about my brain savant due to their brain scanner, they immediately wanted to basically try to frame me for anything that they possibly could. The thing that the courts need to understand is the fact that what law enforcement found before they tried to frame me was the fact that I was one of the 100. So there are only 100 human beings on this planet right now. Only 100 human beings on the entire planet. Out of the billions of people that live on this planet, there are only 100 that are known as prodigious brain savants in this world. Out of those 100 prodigious brain savants in the world, I am literally number one. I'm not just saying that as an exaggerated claim. If you look at the artificial intelligence reports from recently, you will find out that I'm literally the only person who has instantaneous photographic memory in this world. I'm the only one who has focusing, which means that I do not need to take breaks in between me using my brain savant, and also that I could crush my desires like people crush a can of Coke, giving me almost a robot-like effect due to having this brain savant. And I'm the only one who has innovation along with that as well. On top of that, I'm the only one whose powers increase over time as well. So basically, it was tested on August 9, 2022 for 6 hours. After that, May 2023 test proved that my powers increased over time, due to which after July 1st, 2023, law enforcement no longer let me stare into a textbook, which I would do for 4 years from October 2019 till July 1st, 2023. But when law enforcement did their test again on November 14, 2025, May 10, 2026, and June 24, 2026, they found out that my powers increased nonetheless. Despite them inhibiting me from being able to stare into a textbook. The thing that I had to make clear is the fact that law enforcement tries to distort the facts in any way, shape, or form possible. They cannot argue with artificial intelligence when artificial intelligence, after the June 24th brain savant test was overanalyzed, basically named me as literally the number one prodigious brain savant in the world. Number one out of the 100 that are there on this planet right now. You know this for a fact because I'm literally the only one whose powers increase over time. Even if our law enforcement inhibits my brain savant and locks it up completely, it was still increasing over time. Even though they locked it up on July 1st, 2023, the powers increased on November 14th, 2025, May 10th, 2026, and June 24th, 2026, clearly showing that I am literally number one on the list of the 100 prodigious brain savants in the world right now. The artificial intelligence report will speak for itself. Law enforcement try to distort this fact by basically trying to go through pictures of me where my lips were not as wide as they are right now, or not as thick as they are right now, basically to try to take out features that autistic people have, that basically my title of being the new Kim Peek Rain Man, law enforcement basically wanted to take away from me by taking features that I have in similar that are similar to Kim Peek Rain Man. Law enforcement basically wanted to take these features out of the picture and make it look like I don't even have these features, when in fact fact they were just doing this out of their extreme envy, due to the fact that law enforcement got greedy. They had the police called on people like Junaid and people in law enforcement by these girls that were being scammed under my name. They were called over, told about my brain savant, and then law enforcement and their BFFs started running after these girls. The girls started having the police call on them, and really embarrassingly, one of my elementary school teachers' son, who's only about 2 years younger than me, ended up calling the police on them as well. So what law enforcement ended up doing was they had people argue about my brain savant that had no clue about these tools being used to lock it up, and then they got extremely greedy due to the police being called on them by these girls. What they ended up doing was they ended up overanalyzing June 24th. Artificial intelligence is neither a liar nor is it my friend. It's not going to lie for me over and over again on every single brain savant test that's done, nor am I psychic enough to predict what the reports say for the artificial intelligence report for my brain savant. Artificial intelligence clearly marked me as the number one brain savant after June 24th, 2026 was overanalyzed by July 18th, giving me the highest probability chance of becoming extremely rich out of any other human being on this planet right now due to my brain savant powers. So basically what what law enforcement basically ended up doing was they try to distort the facts by trying to find pictures of me where my lips were not as wide at like Kim Peek Rain Man are, so that they could take away the title of Rain Man from me. They try to do these things to try to distort the facts when in fact it's irrelevant. If you could find a picture of me where my lips are not as wide or not, it's irrelevant. It does not change the fact that artificial intelligence has already spit out the words that I have instantaneous photographic memory, focusing and innovation, and that my powers increase over time, making me the number one brain savant in the world right now, giving me the highest probability chance of becoming extremely rich out of any other human being on this planet right now as we speak. So that does not change anything. Whether you could find a picture of me where my lips are not as wide or my lips are not as thick is not going to change anything about me. I still remain Rain Man because artificial intelligence named me Rain Man. So basically what ended up happening was law enforcement tried to distort the facts by trying to do these things that have absolutely nothing to do with anything. It's not going to change the fact that I have instantaneous photographic memory, innovation, and focusing, just because even if they did try to find a picture of me where I was not looking as autistic as I am, it doesn't change anything. And similarly, law enforcement tries to distort the facts in many ways. When facts are unarguable, then when the facts are something that artificial intelligence is spitting out with its own mouth, saying that I have all these powers, law enforcement cannot argue against the computer. It cannot argue against artificial intelligence. Similarly, when law enforcement went through the records, they tried to find a single instance of my mother ever saying anything remotely considered bad around anyone ever in her entire life, despite being watched 24/7 since I was an 11-year-old child. There was not one instance of my mother ever saying anything remotely considered bad from her mouth ever around anyone, about anyone, in any way, shape, or form, racist, bad, anti-government, any way, shape, or form, bad whatsoever. So law enforcement tried to distort this fact as well by claiming that my mother was either low IQ, stupid, or dumb, or anything of that sort of nature. Just like how after artificial intelligence spits out the words that I have instantaneous photographic memory, innovation, focusing, and that my powers increase over time, law enforcement goes and tries to distort the fact that they cannot change with law enforcement, with artificial intelligence spitting this out, and me saying what artificial intelligence just told them without me being able to read the report, clearly showing that either I'm psychic or someone told me the report, what it said, or that I'm obviously telling the truth. Law enforcement couldn't change this, so they tried to distort this fact by trying to find pictures of me where I was not looking as autistic as I am, looking differently than regular autistic people, like how Kim Peek has like this big white lips. They try to find pictures of me where I was not looking autistic. So basically, they try to distort the facts. Similarly, what ended up happening was law enforcement tries to distort the facts, where law enforcement went through the records since I was an 11-year-old child, literally a quarter of a century ago, 25 years ago, and law enforcement tried to find instances where my mother said something anti-government, bad, racist in any way, shape, or form. They couldn't. They then went through the records and tried to find instances instances where I was being adult supervised by one of law enforcement's own BFFs as a child, and my mother was present in that setting. They couldn't find a single setting where, when that happened, my mother was there, clearly showing from facts and evidences that my mother was telling the truth when I was an 11-year-old child to law enforcement, that it was only due to the force and necessity of a single mother that I had to be adult supervised by one of law enforcement's BFFs, and that it would only go on till I became even slightly mentally mature as a child, when law enforcement were not able to find a single instance of my mother ever saying anything remotely considered bad her entire life, racist, or any way, shape, or form bad, and not a single instance of my mother being present in a setting where I was being adult supervised by one of law enforcement's own BFFs after my mother said that it was only due to the force and necessity of a single mother working at fast food restaurants, needing anyone watching me for free, adult supervising me. And not a single instance finding of my mother being there and present in that setting while I was being adult supervised by one of law enforcement's own BFFs. Law enforcement could not bear the fact that their facts were inarguable. Not one instance of my mother was saying that anything you really consider bad, racist, any way, shape, or form. Not one instance of my mother being present in a setting where anything you remotely consider bad could have been said around me by one of law enforcement's own BFFs. While I was being adult supervised, clearly showing from facts and evidences that I was being adult supervised. It was due to the force and necessity of a single mother, and it was only temporarily, daily, and only until my mother, and only until I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity as a child. Like the artificial intelligence report that they tried to distort with trying to find pictures of me where I wasn't looking autistic, law enforcement tried to distort this fact where they tried to distort the fact where not one instance of my mother ever saying anything remotely considered bad or being present in a setting where anything remotely considered bad was ever said around me when I was being adult supervised as a child, clearly showing that it was due to the force and necessity of a single mother. They try to distort this fact by saying that my mother is either dumb or too stupid or too low IQ to have been able to even say anything bad her entire life, when in fact the facts and evidences show that not only the tax papers show that my mother worked at fast food restaurants my entire childhood to help raise me, but she worked at Food Line grocery store to help pay for all of my overseas schooling. She paid for my food, she paid for my basic necessities, she paid for my transportation, she even paid for my exam fees, and afterwards when I was sleeping on the side of the street, she was paying for me to go back and forth from her house to back on the street. Not only this, my mother was actually smart enough to take me out of every setting where anything, even any setting that was no longer needed. The moment I became even mentally mature, after which time I was never seen in a setting where anything remotely considered bad was ever said around me ever again, despite me, neither me nor my mother being tipped off and everyone being tipped off by law enforcement themselves. Uncle Joey and his in-laws since 2001 by law enforcement, and everyone else through money fraud or sex schemes, money fraud which were just stopped about 2 months ago, clearly showing from facts and evidence that it wasn't us tipping anyone off, it was law enforcement, and we weren't tipped off since we didn't even whisper amongst each other ever about being tipped off. So that is put aside. But the fact of the matter is, I've lived with my mother my entire life, never even lived in the same country as my dad, the greedy farmer, never talked to him on the phone, making it literally impossible for someone whom I've never even spoken to or lived with, even in the same country, to have had any effect or environment in my life whatsoever. But the fact of the matter is, law enforcement has to not only consider the fact that she was smart enough to work at fast food restaurants to help raise me as a child, but that she was smart enough to work at Food Line grocery stores to help pay for my school, my food, my transportation, exam fees, basic necessities, everything that I needed in order to live there, and later on even to go back and forth from her house and back to my school while sleeping on the side of the streets, literally. But also the fact that the moment I gained slightest bit of mental maturity, I was never seen in any settings, no longer needed ever again, whether it was setting where anything remotely considered bad could have been said or anything good could have been said, no setting no longer ever needed. In comparison, she was much more smarter than law enforcement, who never changed their setting, ever. While my mother fulfilled the promise to law enforcement that she made when I was an 11-year-old child. The moment I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, as soon as I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity as a child, I was never seen in any setting, no longer needed. Just like my mother promised when I was an 11-year-old child. Law enforcement, on the other hand, has been running sex schemes with Uncle Joey's in-laws since the year 2001. They have been running money fraud with other individuals that have been going on for years and years that were only stopped just recently. So if law enforcement wants to argue that the reason my mother's never been heard uttering one word considered bad her entire life, despite being watched for the past quarter century, since I was an 11-year-old child, since the war occurred when I was an 11-year-old child in 2001, then law enforcement has to consider the fact that they're basically saying that law enforcement is dumber, stupider, and lower IQ than my single mother is and was, due to the fact that my single mother did something that law enforcement could never do. My single mother fulfilled the promise she made to law enforcement the moment I became even slightly mentally mature and no longer needed to leave home every time she went to work. Law enforcement never fulfilled that promise they made to their country. Law enforcement has been running their sex scheme with Uncle Joey's in-laws since 2001. Law enforcement's been running money fraud that has been run for years and years. So if law enforcement wants to distort the facts by saying that the reason my mother has never been heard uttering one word considered bad since I was an 11-year-old child, due to her being low IQ, which is why I've been never even in a setting where even anything remotely considered bad could have been said around me, since I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity as a child, because my mother was too low IQ to put me in a setting where anything remotely considered bad could be said around me. Then law enforcement has to consider the fact that they're distorting the fact by saying that my mother's low IQ, by saying that law enforcement is even lower IQ and even dumber than her, since my mother was actually smart enough to remove me from all settings where anything remotely considered bad could have been said around me the moment I became slightly mentally mature, whereas law enforcement since 2001 till this very day today has been running the same sex schemes that they had been running since 2001. Law enforcement is still running the money fraud that they were running for years and years, only stopped very aggressively by the government due to how stubbornly it was run. The other thing, so law enforcement would basically, if they try to distort this fact, the fact that my mother's never been heard uttering one word considered bad since I was an 11-year-old child due to her being too low IQ, dumb, or stupid, then law enforcement has to consider the fact that they're basically saying that they're even lower IQ, dumber, and stupider due to the fact that my mother was actually smart enough to take me out of every environment the moment I became even slightly mentally mature, whereas law enforcement never came out of any environments whatsoever. Instead, their sex schemes with Uncle Joey's in-laws are continuous till this very day today. Since 2001, they gave Uncle Joey a governor's protocol at the November 2023 funeral. They provided him with top-notch intelligence, give him protocol like you would not believe. Law enforcement if they say that she was too dumb and stupid, due to which she never uttered one word considered bad her entire life since I was being watched, and she was being watched since I was an 11-year-old child, then law enforcement has to consider the fact that they're saying that they're even dumber and stupider due to the fact that law enforcement is still, till this very day today, running money fraud that they had been running for years and years that was only aggressively stopped by the government about 2 months ago due to how stubbornly it had been run for years and years. So not only has she never uttered one word considered bad since being watched since I was an 11-year-old child, she's never been present in any of the settings where anything remotely considered bad could have been said by one of law enforcement's own BFFs when I was being adult supervised as a child. Now, you have to remember, this is only saying and not doing. No matter what law enforcement's BFFs could have said that could have been considered bad around me as a child, it would not constitute as a crime, whereas, let me tell you something, that would be constituting as a crime. So basically, my dad, the greedy framer, wants to try to force me to go to Ireland to him, and the reason he's trying to do this is due to the greed and due to envy. Envy to either make sure that my mother cannot get the money, and also envy to make sure that I cannot get ahead in life due to extreme envy and knowing that if my brain savant gets freed, he won't get a single penny out of me. The government and the courts need to understand the fact that my dad, the greedy framer, his visa is banned to the U.S. his visa is banned to England. He cannot travel in either one of these countries. And the reason he cannot travel to these countries is very simple. Every time my dad, the greedy framer, would come over to the US before this current administration came in, he would be followed around by the FBI. And the FBI would go over to Ibrahim, the greedy framer's house, and talk to his envious mother about who this man was and why he was going over to their house. She would have to explain that he was her brother and that this was the reason he was visiting the US. Now the policies change. These kinds of peoples are no longer allowed into this country anymore. Not only this country, he's also blacklisted from England. He cannot travel there either. And let me tell you the reason why. Out of the one of the 3 times I've ever met my dad, the greedy framer, one of those times was in 2011 where I saw with my own eyes my dad, the greedy framer, basically recruiting people to go join terror groups. What ended up happening was my dad, the greedy framer, and you can check this in your own FBI records if you want, if you think I'm a liar or lying. My dad, the greedy framer, basically what he was doing was he was recruiting people to go join terror groups. And what ended up happening was some of those people that he was recruiting to go join terror groups ended up being government informants. And those due to them being government informants, my dad, the greedy framer, was basically caught. And due to him being caught, his visa is banned to the US, his visa is banned to England, and before this current administration, every time he would try to travel to the US, he would be followed around by the FBI, and the FBI would basically have to go to Ibrahim the greedy framer's envious mother's house to ask her exactly why this man was visiting her. So this entire notion that he wants to play out, the change of environment, this and that, his environment is terrible compared to my mother's environment that law enforcement has witnessed since I was an 11-year-old child. Not once has she ever been heard uttering one word considered bad her entire life. When I was being adult supervised, anything that could have been said by one of law enforcement's BFFs was only something that being said. It's not something being done like what my dad, the greedy framer, was caught doing, where he was caught sending people to terror groups, and due to which the FBI fully knows about this, okay? They just cannot testify about this due to the fact that the people that are witnesses to this fact are government informants. And it's because of this that my dad, the greedy framer's visa is banned to the US, it's banned to England. If you think I'm lying, you could check from the record yourself. So it's incomparable. My dad, the greedy framer's environment, and my mother's environment. My mother's never been heard uttering one word considered bad her entire life. Never has she ever been heard uttering one word considered bad her entire life since I was an 11-year-old child. Not only that, what she said when I was an 11-year-old child, saying that it was only due to the force and necessity I was being adult supervised by one of law enforcement's BFFs, who could have only said something remotely considered bad, not done anything, like what my dad, the greedy framer, has been caught doing, sending people to terror groups that were government informants. Whatever could have been said around me, even remotely considered bad, was only said around me remotely considered bad, and it was due to the forced necessity of a single mother, due to the fact that we know this for a fact, due to the fact that my mother would never be present in that setting where anything remotely considered bad could have been said around me as a child ever when I was being adult supervised. And after I gained a slight bit of mental maturity, my mother fulfilled the promise she made to law enforcement when I was an 11-year-old child. Something that law enforcement never fulfilled their promise to their country ever. My mother took me out of every environment no longer needed. And while law enforcement has been in those environments right now as we speak, and not only did she take me out of every environment no longer needed, I was never seen in any settings where anything remotely considered bad could have ever been said around me ever again in my life. I lived with my mother years and years before I went overseas or anywhere else. Even when I went overseas, the facts and evidences will show I never lived with my dad, the greedy framer, not even in the same country, never talked to him on the phone, making it impossible for someone like that to have had any influence on my life or environment whatsoever. Clearly showing that from facts and evidences. Except for that, So this notion that my dad, the greedy farmer, is trying to play due to his extreme greed and envy to try to claim that his environment could have been somewhat so much better, or this or that, is absolutely nonsensical. Considering the fact that anything that could have been said around me as a child would only be said around me as a child, whereas what my dad, the greedy farmer, has been caught doing, sending people to terror groups who ended up being government informants, by the way, due to which the FBI would follow him around every time he would come to the U.S. His sister, Ibrahim's envious mother, would be questioned by the FBI every single time he would come to the U.S., due to which he has been blacklisted. He cannot come to the U.S. anymore. He cannot go to England anymore. So this notion of him having some sort of a better environment or this or that is just nonsensical, considering the fact that my mother has had almost a perfect environment for me since I was being watched since I was an 11-year-old child with her. Not only that, after I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity as a child, I've never been remotely present in any settings where anything remotely considered bad could have been said around me ever in my life. I lived with her for years before I went overseas or anywhere else in the world. And even when I went overseas, I only lived with my mother. I only talked to her on the phone, as the facts and evidences show, every single day over the phone. And it was only her house that I came back and forth to. And after a little while, even the place where I would live would be on the side of the streets near my school or inside of mosque, while I'd give my pharmacy finals, and nowhere else except for that, and going back and forth from my mother's house till I finally got my 108 exams done, got my overseas degree done, got back home. Something that literally only takes a simple English exam for me to be able to sit in the board exams. That English exam, by the way, I passed in Saudi Arabia while being tortured. That board exam, the June 24 brain savant test, will tell you it's literally a day's work for me, even though it's around 1,000 pages. It's literally less than a day's work for a guy like me with my brain savant powers. That artificial intelligence is not a liar, nor is it my friend who'd lie for me over and over again, nor am I psychic enough to predict what the report says without me either telling the truth or someone telling me what the report says. So the fact of the matter is, after I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity as a child, I was never even remotely present in any setting where anything remotely considered bad could have been said by any of law enforcement's BFFs ever again. Now, you got to remember, this is only saying and not doing. What my dad, the greedy farmer, has been caught doing, sending people to terror groups that all ended up being government informants, was incredibly illegal. And he's been banned from multiple countries, including the U.S. and England. He cannot go there. My mother's environment is incomparable to my dad, the greedy farmer, or anyone else. She's never been heard uttering one word considered bad her entire life since she was being watched since I was an 11-year-old child. A quarter of a century ago, literally 25 years ago, in 2001, I was an 11-year-old child when the war occurred. My mother's never been heard uttering one word considered bad her entire life. After I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, I was never even seen in a setting where anything even remotely considered bad could have been said around me ever again. And brain scanner being used on my brain clearly proved from facts and evidences that I met everyone of every race, religion, ethnicity, whether they were Christian, Orthodox, Jewish people with long beards, or anyone of any other race, religion, ethnicity, with the same level of love and respect, just like how my mother taught me and raised me to be like. I loved them and I respected each and every single one of them the exact same way. The brain scanner is best piece of factual info on that, the best piece of evidence, scanning my brain for years and years and measuring how much I love each and every single person of different race religions, whether they're Christian people, Orthodox, Jewish people with long beards, or anyone, any race, religion, ethnicity out there. I would love them, respect them exactly the same exact way, whether they were Jewish people with long beards who would tell me about zinc, or people of other races, religions, ethnicities. I would always love them the same exact way, and the brain scanner is biggest proof and evidence of this fact. So my mother's environment's been nothing short of perfect since it's been watched since past 25 years, since I was an 11-year-old child when the war occurred, when in the year 2001. She was never present in a setting where anything remotely considered bad could have been said around me by one of law enforcement's own BFFs, and that she fulfilled the promise to her country, to law enforcement when I was an 11-year-old child, removing me from all settings no longer needed as soon as I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, whereas law enforcement never fulfilled the promise they made to their country. Their sex schemes with Uncle Joey's in-laws started in 2001, still going on till this day. Money fraud that's been run for years and years, clearly showing from facts and evidence is that if they try to distort this fact by saying that the reason my mother never uttered one word considered bad her entire life was because she was dumb, stupid, or low IQ, then they have to consider the fact that they're much dumber, lower IQ, and stupider due to the fact that she at least fulfilled the promise she made to law enforcement when I was an 11-year-old child, the moment I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, whereas law enforcement never fulfilled the promise they made to their country. Their sex schemes with Uncle Joey's in-laws are continuing till this very day today. Money fraud that was going on till this very day today, only about 2 months ago when it was very aggressively stopped by the government because they got sick and tired of this stubbornly run money fraud that was being run every single month. So yeah, these facts and evidences have to be considered, and my dad's history has to be considered, and that he's only trying to force me to go to him due to greed for my brain savant money and envy of my mother benefiting from it, and the fact that and the fact that he's not able to see me thrive in this world due to his extreme envy, rage, and anger at the fact that he knows that I'm not going to share any of my brain savant money with him or anyone else that I don't want to share it with. So yeah, those are the facts and evidences. My dad's visa is also banned to the U.S. and also banned to England due to the fact that he was caught recruiting people to go join terror groups. All of them ended up being government informants, due to which his visa got banned. Not only that, every time he would travel to the U.S., he would be followed around by the FBI, who would go and visit people like Ibrahim the Greedy Framer's mother before my dad, the Greedy Framer, would actually go there. Due to this fact, due to him recruiting people to join terror groups, that he was caught doing. So I wasn't lying after all, and he was caught doing this, and yeah. And so now his visa is banned to the U.S., it's banned to England, and a lot of other countries. So his environment, by the way, is incomparable to my mother, who's been picture perfect since day one, since she was being watched, since past 25 years, since the day one of me being an 11-year-old child, my mother being watched with me. And the brain scanner is biggest evidence being attached to my brain after I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, clearly showing from facts and evidences that I gained my mother's character, and that I loved everyone of every race, religion, ethnicity, all the same, and that this entire notion that law enforcement tries to use to try to distort the facts by claiming that my mother's low IQ, dumb or stupid, has to be considered with the fact that if my mother's dumb and stupid, then law enforcement's even dumber and stupider due to the fact that my mother was smart enough to fulfill the promise she made to law enforcement when I was an 11-year-old child. Law enforcement never fulfilled the promise they made to their country. Their sex schemes is still going on since 2001 with Uncle Joey's in-laws. Money fraud, which has been run for years and years, still going on until this day, very aggressively stopped by the government due to how stubbornly it was run. So these facts and evidences have to be considered. Law enforcement also always tries to distort the facts after they overanalyze June 24 brain savant test, finding out that not only am I one of the prodigious brain savants in the world, only 100 in the world right now as we speak. I'm number one out of those 100. If you look at November 24 brain savant test, you will find out that this is obviously the reason why they've been so obsessed with me. I am number one out of the 100 due to the fact that I have focusing, innovation, and instantaneous photographic memory. Not only that, after the 6-hour-long brain savant test on August 9, 2022, it was done on May 2023, finding out that my powers increased over time, due to which after July 1st, 2023, law enforcement no longer ever let me stare into a textbook ever again. But November 14, 2025, they found out that my powers increased nonetheless. May 10, 2026, they found out that my powers increased nonetheless. June 24, 2026, they found out that my powers increased nonetheless. So I am number one, and I am Rain Man, due to the fact that not only do I have instantaneous photographic memory, innovation, and focusing as superhuman power, but that my powers increase over time. making it literally the most rare brain savant in the world right now. So finding a picture of me where my lips are not as wide like Kim Peek, it's not going to change that fact. I will be Rain Man no matter how much you hate that fact. Thank you.